All right, good afternoon and welcome to another episode of the Jane Irrigation Training Series. I'm Richard Restuccia, Vice President of Water Management Solutions. And today we're going to talk about a subject that I think is really fascinating. It's this whole concept of fertilizer injectors and, more importantly, why we like the Dosatron fertilizer injector and how that can help you as a grower be more successful. And we're really fortunate to have somebody who I think is a real expert in this area leading us through our discussion today. And that's Frank Toves from IDC. So Frank, I've known for quite a while now. And, Frank looks young, but I think he's been in this business for like 15 years now. And when I think of somebody who's really welcomed technology in agriculture and has really been a leader. I think of Frank. And when I think about somebody who's got hands-on practical knowledge in technology for ag irrigation, especially in the Central Valley, again, Frank's name comes up first with a lot of people. So we're really fortunate to have Frank here. Frank attended Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, makes his home there in the Central Valley, and has been really active with the growers. And the thing I really also appreciate about Frank is he cares about his customers. He wants to make them successful, and I know they really appreciate that. So, Frank, welcome. Welcome to the show today. How are you?
Good, Richard. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so I know it's been really last couple of weeks. It got hot all of a sudden, right? We were having reasonable, normal temperatures, and now it's getting hot in the Central Valley, unusually hot. What's it been like out there?
Yeah, I mean, it was 90 degrees in Salinas the other day, right? Which is unheard of for us. So we're used to sunny and 65, but 90. I mean, some of the growers, we had a guy who had a repair the other day. Was you got to get here now because my lettuce is wilting, right? So it's crazy. One day it's rainy and the next it's 90.
Right.
And I can't imagine the Central Valley. I was in Sacramento yesterday and it was pretty warm. So
yeah, I know when we talked yesterday afternoon, late in the afternoon, I could hear it in your voice. We're like, man, it's just busting out right now. So anyway, well, I'm glad you're out there and helping. I know they need the help and they got the right person helping.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah, so well, let's talk fertilizer injectors for a second, Frank. And I know you're involved with a lot of people who are growing indoors as well as out. But first question I want to ask is, do I need a fertilizer injector if I'm a grower? What are the circumstances around that?
Yeah, I mean, most growers for any crop are applying some type of fertilizer, right? And most of that is done through the irrigation water, through fertigation. We still have guys doing side dressing and stuff like that, but on the bulk commercial farms, a lot of it is done through the irrigation water. So a fertilizer injector is almost a necessity in almost all the ranches that we deal with. And one of the most common ones being a manual Honda engine on a trailer, right? Injecting either at the well site or at each valve, but definitely something that's required that most growers are used to using.
Yeah, so does every grower do their own, or do they hire out to a third party sometime? How's that work?
Yeah, I mean, the commercial farms that we deal with here in Salinas Valley, Santa Maria Valley, there are both, services that do fertilizer applications, and then some guys that do it in-house. We over the past few years, we've done more and more automation. So trying to bring that stuff, with the labor costs going up, trying to do that all locally, the grower controlling it themselves, right? So, but yeah, we do still see both, a lot of both.
Yeah, and if I'm not using a fertilizer injector, what am I doing?
Yeah, I mean, what are you doing, right? You're not applying fertilizer, probably. Definitely not in your irrigation water, right?
Yeah.
So if especially guys using drip, I mean, we almost always see a fertilizer injector of some type on drip systems.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great to hear, and especially because drip's getting more and more popular every year. It's great to see these advancements, right? A lot of water savings there. So,
Yep.
what are some of the advantages of people using fertilizer injectors besides the ease?
Well, just, getting the fertilizer where it needs to be in the root zone, right? If you're using drip irrigation, if you're using a fertilizer injector, a pump, a dosatron that we're going to talk about today, you're getting a more precise application of that fertilizer to where it needs to be, where the crop needs it, right? And then with the more and more regulations, you can control what you're actually putting out there, right? And record that and keep that data for when someone asks for it.
Yeah, so I was thinking about, Eric Olson, he did those a few presentations on our three-part series on nitrogen for us. And when I think about nitrogen use efficiency being in the 30s, right, maybe 35, 37%, I think, oh my gosh, we are wasting so much here, and what happens to all that nitrogen? So that's definitely a big advantage. So thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, definitely.
And so there's many different fertilizer injectors out there, Frank.
Yeah, everything from, like I mentioned, a basic gas powered, engine pump that you see on most farms to Maisie Venturi injection, which are also pretty common, to Dosatrons, and all the way up to fully automated systems, right? With pumps and, high speed solenoids and Venturi combos. So we sell and deal with all aspects of it. It really depends on the application and the grower level, right, where they're at.
So then for the Dosatrons, which you do a lot of work with and installation with, you like those a lot. How come?
Well, for one, they're easy to use, easy to install. You don't need any electricity. Um, the serviceability of them, the support, I think, behind Dosatron themselves, the local support they have here in California, in the States in general. That's one of the biggest factors that we consider when we partner with the manufacturer, right? And just the ease of the grower transitioning from a very manual way to do fertigation to the next step, which we would consider a Dosatron, and that ease of transition for the grower, right? So to get to the next level, it's a good stepping stone.
Yeah, so when I think of a fertilizer injector, I think of a pump, right? Somehow I've got to pump this fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, into my drip. But then you said there's no electricity. So how does this happen?
I have a few slides that'll go over it, but basically there's a hydraulic piston or a motor that the water flow and pressure will drive that piston through the Dosatron and cause a suction, which will draw the nutrient or fertilizer up into the flow. And that's how you get the injection.
Yeah, so that's interesting, right? Because when I think of pistons, right, I think of course, my truck engine, and
Yeah,
think about the lubrication, the oil there. Do we just does the water just lubricate this piston, and this is
yeah,
why?
it's all water driven. The newer models are all plastic, so high reliability. We service them every year to keep them going, but there's some units that have been out there for longer than I've even known about them, right? So
Yeah,
definitely a reliable form of injection.
right. Well, listen, do you have some photos or something we can see on your slides?
Yeah,
Would this be a good time to start sharing that?
let's get it up here. Can you see that?
Yeah, it looks just great.
Perfect.
And while Frank's getting set up here, I just want to remind everybody that we have both the chat and the Q&A open. So if you've got some questions you want to ask somebody who's really experienced with these products, today's your chance to ask Frank. So.
Perfect. So here we go. So the first slide, basically, if you don't know what fertigation is, it's the most common form of chemigation, and it's injecting fertilizer of any type directly into the irrigation water. And like I mentioned previously, we want to do that because that's the most efficient way to apply the fertilizer directly to where the plants need it, right? And then here's the types that we talked about: pumps being gas or electric, Venturis, automated dosing, which can involve pumps and Venturis, and then hydraulic dosing with something like a Dosatron.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think one of the questions we're getting now, and one we always get, is look, I've got a fertilizer injector for my roses at my home, and I would say that how much fertilizer I put on them is somewhat subjective, but it actually should be very objective, right? So
Yeah.
how do we know how much fertilizer to put in these tanks that actually go to the plants?
Yeah, you got to talk to your crop advisor, right? There's a lot of CCAs out there that can help make those determinations. We don't make those recommendations here at IDC, but we can help determine the injection rates with their help, right? And determine the right equipment to use and how to apply that. But it's definitely a science of both irrigation and camigation and fertigation, not an art, right?
Right. So it's really, I mean, it's a calculation.
Yeah. The plant needs what the plant needs. And, that is a hard fact to try to get across to some people, but it's definitely true.
Right. So your crop advisor is going to help you figure out how much nitrogen, for example, your plant needs. And then if you know how much water your drip system's putting out per plant, you should be able then, reading the label directions of the fertilizer, figure this out.
Exactly. So with something like a Dosatron, we can select the right equipment to make sure we meet those injection requirements.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And I think, I'm always in awe when I drive by these farms and I look and I see all the plants the same size, same uniformity. And I think, oh man, someone's doing a really good job of getting everything equal to all the plants.
Exactly. So this next slide just shows a little animation of how the water flows through the Dosatron. So in this example, the unit's installed in line with the complete total water flow going through the unit. As you can see on that number 4 there, the concentrates mixed with the incoming water as that piston goes up and down. So, some things to consider when designing systems for this is there is a pressure loss across that Dosatron, depending on the size of the unit, anywhere from a few PSI to, 5 or 6 PSI. So definitely consider that when designing these systems, but that's what's needed to drive that mechanism.
So does this go upstream of the valves or downstream?
Typically we install them downstream of, say, an electric valve, if we're going to automate something. And then we have valves on both sides if we're going to do any kind of serviceability. So it really depends on the application, the branch, what you're doing, where these are installed. We've done them at the pumping station. We've done a lot of them out in the open field at the valve level. So there's endless possibilities of where these can be installed and how can what they can be installed with.
Yeah, I know you know what I'm thinking here, right? Do I need one per valve, or can I buy one and run it through multiple valves? So I guess what I heard was you could do one if you had a master valve to be safe, right? Because you wouldn't want this under pressure all the time.
Yeah, I mean, they can operate upwards of 100 PSI depending on the model that you choose, right? So, and we do recommend that you install proper air vents. If you're in an indoors facility, we use surge arresters to protect the equipment from water hammer and sudden spikes in pressure. But there are a bunch of different models. So here on this slide, you'll see that we have, on the left is a pretty common D14, which is a 14 GPM model. There's a D40 there, which is also pretty common on the indoor applications, all the way up to the one on the far right, which is 400 GPM. So we've installed these in parallel to achieve upwards of 1,200 gallons a minute on open field applications for, say, strawberries, for example. So there's a bunch of combinations here, and you can install them, at the main pump, at the valve, like you said. It just really depends on the application.
Yeah, so I'm looking at that one on the far right. It almost looks like a filter down below. Is that a filter?
No, it's a Dosatron's proprietary diverter technology. So it uses a smaller unit on top to achieve a higher flow rate to the system. Whereas this, if you look at this one in the middle, is a 100 GPM unit. That one still has the whole flow going through the actual system itself, where the two on the right are actually on, I would say, a bypass to make it easy type system. If you were to open this up, you would see there's only part of the flow, about 10% of the flow that goes through the actual Dosatron.
Yeah. Okay. And then the ones on the left, right, the far left,
Yeah.
how are those typically installed? Do you do you clip them to the wall? What do you do?
Yeah, we've done everything. They come with a little bracket that you can mount to, say, unistrut or directly to a backboard out in the field to a 2x12, right? So they're really easy to install. This picture here has, some common applications of how they're manifolded together. So this here on the top with the blue units is common on indoor or greenhouse growing, where we have a lower flow rate that all the water will go through the units. We have a monitor kit, a couple of mixing chambers, and then this here on the right, far right, is the surge arrestor that I mentioned to protect from pressure spikes.
Yeah, so well, this is interesting, right? Because it doesn't look like I mean, if you've done a few of these, this looks like a pretty simple installation. Wouldn't take too long, right?
No, definitely. I mean, it's all NPT threads. We use a lot of unions, a lot of banjo fittings. So not something that's terribly difficult to install. We've helped growers install it themselves, right? Get them going on it. So, and the same goes with the service of it. It can be done by the grower. We can do it here in-house at our locations. Not something that takes very much learning to use and to operate and install.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, but you're probably going to help me set it up maybe the first time. But after that, am I going to be good to go, or am I going to still have questions?
Yeah, with just about anything that we sell, right? There's always going to be that period of I don't know what this is or how it works, right? Even though I went through the training, you showed me how to do it. So yeah, I would say there's going to be a few phone calls, a few visits to dial in the injection rate, to understand some of the issues that you could come up with. But the more and more you use it, the easier it is, right? A lot of people use Venturis, for example, which are also great, and they're so used to using them, right, that they're almost standard on a lot of systems. So it's one of those things that once you use it and learn it, it becomes second nature.
Yeah. So that's it. I love that. And the other thing, I'm thinking about this too, and I want to give a plug to you. You guys are doing such a good job on your blog right now on the IDC website. That a lot of what I need to remember, right? If I'm not doing it every day, I always have to remind myself, a month or two later of how to do that. And some of the real hands-on subject material that you guys are producing on your blog right now is really great for that, right? So being able to review that has certainly been helpful and saved me a phone call from time to time. So if you guys haven't taken a look at the blog on the IDC website, Irrigation Design and Construction, or IDC Supply, do it. The blog's just great. Fascinating articles there that Frank and his team have put together.
Yeah, and a lot of those blog articles come from in-field real-world experience, right? Jesse, one of our technicians, just did a blog on electrical maintenance, right? So you'd be surprised on how many calls we get because of someone that didn't do the wiring correctly, right? Or they didn't maintain the system correctly. So easily avoidable problems can be solved by just preventative maintenance. And that's why I think the blogs have been successful, is because we're the ones actually in the field. The guys and the girls writing these articles are the ones doing the work, right?
Yeah.
And we've seen the issues. So
yeah, and totally, Frank, I read that article. I really did. And then I went and I checked all my electronics on my irrigation system, because I started to think they're going to go bad as soon as it gets really hot.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
need them, right? And I don't want to be repairing them. And you think about how easy it is and to spot the issues. That's you guys had some photos and you go, oh yeah, these are obvious issues to spot, that it may not be a problem today, but it's gonna be a problem. And Murphy's Law says it's gonna be the Friday before a 3-day weekend that I'm getting ready to go away.
Yeah, I mean, the calls that we get are Saturday and Sunday, right? And it never fails that of course, that's the time you're doing something with your family, but these systems require constant maintenance, right? The plants don't stop growing because it's a Sunday. So if you can do that preventative maintenance, definitely help reduce those calls on the weekends.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I also, one thing you didn't show yet, and I saw it on the website, the Dosatron website, was the cart.
Yeah, definitely. I don't have a photo of that in the slides, but that's something that's pretty popular with, say greenhouse growers. You can roll it to say a specific bench or a zone and plug it in with some quick disconnect fittings and maybe add a certain fertilizer treatment for just a single set, right? A lot of nurseries use them. We see them on a lot of cannabis farms. And it's even on disinfection, we've seen people use it to apply, hydrogen peroxide or some other thing for disinfection, right? So very mobile, easy to use, easy way to apply an additional nutrient when needed.
Right. And so, and then we just got a question in again, right? Does it use power to work? And I think the point is, right, that it doesn't.
It does not. Yeah, they're hydraulically driven, so driven by the water. In this photo here, there is a power for this EC and pH monitor, but the actual injections themselves are no electricity required. So farms are great. Remote sites, we do a lot of these for that reason.
Yeah. Frank, are there other things people inject besides fertilizer into their systems?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the applications for these dosatrons, you'll see them everywhere from the medical industry, very popular in car washes, believe it or not. If you go into a car wash room or just look up some pictures, you'll see a ton of dosatrons. And then in the growing, people use them for, pH, so acid. You see a silica here being injected. So, a lot of different applications available for these with these dosatrons.
Huh, that's interesting. That I think sometimes we're only limited by our imagination, what we can do here.
Exactly, yeah. And, like I mentioned, disinfection, right? When this pandemic started, that, they released some products that were geared directly towards that, which I think was a pretty creative way to use something that already existed.
Yeah, interesting. That's great to know. So I'm wondering, right? These are pretty usable, easy to install. I can figure out how much fertilizer to apply pretty simply. I'm thinking they've got to be really expensive, right? But
Yeah.
ballpark figures, how do they rate?
So some of the smaller units, the inline units, can be a few $100s to say $1,500 list price, depending on the concentrations that you want to inject. And then when you get to the bigger units, these ones down here they could be in the thousands, right? So just depending on the application, they're very, very common on indoor grows because of they're very cost effective, right? So accurate, reliable, simple, and not expensive. So,
Yeah.
and you can find them everywhere, right? We carry them. They're in stock in our locations. A lot of hydro stores have them. And, they're not expensive, right?
Right, because I'm thinking also it's not something I buy for one season and I have to get a new one next year, right? I'm going to get how many seasons out of these?
Yeah, like I mentioned, there's some that have been around for 15, 20 years, longer than I even knew how to use them. So we've come across some in some old greenhouse facilities here in Monterey County that have been working since the 70s, right? With some seal kits and some replacement kits to get them back up and going, and they seem to last for a really long time if you keep that maintenance up on them, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, when I think about what I'm investing into my fields, this is one of the smaller investments that actually gets me a lot more value in the long run, right?
Yeah, definitely, especially when you're talking about the nutrients that the plants require, right? Putting the investment in things like irrigation and fertigation would be on the top of my list if I were a grower, because that's where all the water goes.
Right. So, yeah, so what are we looking at here? This is a lot of numbers for me.
Yeah, it looks pretty daunting, but it basically is telling you the percentage or the ratio of injection for the unit. Say on a 40 GPM, a D40 or D8 Dosatron, you can have a 0.2 to 2% injection ratio. So you turn the dial on the Dosatron itself to set that injection rate. And these are some quick charts to kind of help you determine where to put those set points, right? So if you want to do 1 mil per gallon, it's 0.026% on the Dosatron. So, and on Dosatron's website, both Dosatron USA and dilutionsolutions.com, you can find calculators that are very helpful. So you can take say if you're using a bottled fertilizer of some type, you can take those recommended injection rates off the bottle and convert it to the Dosatron percent injection or ratio.
Very nice. And so somebody's asking too, is there a maximum amount per hour and a minimum amount per hour that you can inject?
Yeah, it really comes down to the unit that you're choosing. So if you're using a 40 GPM model, let's say, and you choose that can do 5%, you can inject 2 gallons a minute, right? Basically. So yeah, based on the model that you choose, the injection rate offered on that specific unit, you can do the math and determine what that low and high range of injection would be compared to the flow.
Yeah, and a few people are commenting right now that their experience with the Dosatrons has been really positive. A lot of positive comments coming in on that. So Frank, if somebody's not using a fertilizer injector or a Dosatron right now, what advice do you have for them?
Well, first of all, I would say talk to us so we can help you out. But it's really an easy transition, right? From say hand mixing fertilizers or using a gas powered pump. It's something that's not going to be too daunting for your field crew, your irrigator, to manage and learn how to use, right? If they're already used to, say, hand mixing certain volumes of different fertilizers into a tank, this is going to easily replace that with very, very little learning needed to do that. So just consider the labor savings, the time savings, and the return on investment on something like this is pretty quick.
Yeah, so Frank, these are great photos. These are real installations that you've been involved in, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so can you take us through them, starting with the one on the top left, it looks like an indoor installation?
Yeah, the top left is an indoor cannabis facility that is a pretty common, they call it the nutrient delivery system, which has, a inlet filter. The inlet's on this picture is on the right. We have a small electric doser for a very finite dosing of a pH control, so an acid. We have a mixing chamber, and then we have several Dosatrons in line that all the water goes through these Dosatrons and is sent out to the room. So in this case, we have 2 zones, so they have 2 manifolds.
So we've got on the bottom 8 Dosatrons.
Yep.
And is that because they're dosing with 8 different nutrients?
Yeah, exactly. So they have, maybe a silica, a bunch of different nutrients, a micro maybe, and then a pH control or a buffer of some type. So pretty common on the indoor applications. The one on the center here is becoming more and more popular to have maybe just an AB with an acid injection. So it really depends on the growing style and the grower themselves, but we're seeing more and more growers go to less of the 8 or 10 injections, more of the AB micros maybe.
And those look like they have some electronic keypads on them. What's happening there?
So those there are the EC/pH monitor. So we have an inline EC sensor and a pH sensor that will show the grower what that water that's flowing past those sensors is reading. These are manual injection or manual set points, so there's no automatic adjustment of those EC and pH settings, but you can do that while viewing that EC and pH, make those adjustments to get the targets that you're looking for.
Yeah,
we have a lot of growers that use them in that way, where they want a EC of 2 and a pH of 6.5, say, and they really disregard the injection percentage, right, recommendations, and they just set those fertilizers to inject to a certain rate to meet targets,
Huh.
which leads to the next goal of then automating, right? Once you learn how to do this manual type injection with the help of something simple like a Dosatron, you can then step into the next world of fully automated systems. And that's what we see a lot of as well.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the blueberries we were talking about earlier, right?
Exactly.
It'd be a great setup for them.
Yep. And that's what we have there on the right is actually on a strawberry ranch. And the system flow rate is about 1100 GPM there. So we have these 3 Dosatrons plumbed in series or in parallel, where all the system flow rate goes through the 3 of them. And then we tie those Dosatrons into a single tank where we inject a single blend of fertilizer.
Yeah, boy, talk about a clean installation too. That looks beautiful.
Yeah, definitely something we take pride in is our installation crews do a good job of making sure everything not only looks clean, but operates correctly, no leaks.
Yeah. So Frank, if I want your help getting started, how do I get a hold of you?
I would say you could find me on Instagram. That's a good start. From there, I reach out through a direct message or a DM, and I can get you my email contact or my phone number. That's probably the easiest way. And then we have a team, all on the coast, Southern California, all the way up to the Oregon border. So we, wherever you're at, especially in California, we have you covered.
Yeah, that's for sure. You guys, and really you just had some new growth into kind of the LA County area. Is that right?
Yeah, we just hired a new outside salesperson that's specifically covering that area. LA, Riverside, Adelanto, Desert Hot Springs, all that area. And this is one of the product lines that's successful down there. So,
And that's mostly the indoor growers.
Indoor greenhouse, yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Frank. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us on a very busy week and a very busy Friday for you. Appreciate your time and effort. And for those of you who've tuned in today, thank you. We really appreciate it. If we didn't have you, we wouldn't be here doing this. And we like doing this. We like irrigation. We love water management. And this is what gets us excited and going every day. So if you haven't seen all the trainings, we've got about 100 now at the janesusa.com/trainings. You can see all the videos there. We also are on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. So if you want to listen as you're going from job to job, you can listen to our podcasts as well. So again, Frank, thank you. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope everybody has a great weekend and a really successful season this year. So thanks again, Frank.
Thank you.